Another important story we wanted to bring to you this morning. So lots of developments. The John Deere strike continues. As you guys likely know, John Deere offered a contract that was an improvement over the previous position. It offered raises, but it maintained, and this is a critical piece, maintained that two-tier structure where workers who have been there for a long time get one level of pay, one set of benefits, one level of pension, and workers who came in more recently, they're sort of kicked down to that lower tier, and their benefits, their pay, everything is less than those workers who had been there for a longer time. So in a narrow vote, that contract offer was voted down. And so the strike continues. Here's the very latest. Let's throw this up on the screen. John Deere customers are now facing weeks-long delays for parts orders due to the ongoing worker strike. This is the first evidence of an impact taking hold during the farm harvest season. Of course, these problems being compounded by the fact that John Deere is dealing with their own issues with the supply chain crisis. But here's why this is really important. This is why these workers have leverage. So if John Deere wasn't suffering, if they weren't having trouble getting their parts and their tractors out the door and delivered on time, then they wouldn't have a lot of incentive to come back with a better deal. They'd be doing okay. You know, they have this ridiculous plan in place where they've got a bunch of their like office workers, white collar workers, trying to fill in. Mostly, I think, dealing with inventory and trying to get parts out the door. That plan is clearly not adequate and not working to deliver on time for their customers. And for these farmers, this is really a make or break time of year. In this story, they say parts and components that U.S. farmers need to keep combines running in the busiest farming season of the year are taking as many as 3 weeks to reach customer hands. That is an eternity when fields need to be quickly harvested to stay ahead of wintry weather, according to dealers and customers in the industry. So the fact that the workers are causing John Deere to feel pain here is highly significant in terms of ultimately their negotiating position.
Right, and so John Deere themselves saying, look, we're done. We're not negotiating anymore. We'll see, right? They've said this is our final offer after it was rejected there by the UAW. It was an immediate 10% raise. I mean, they are pointing out that John Deere has just had its best year ever. And looking into it a bit more, what John Deere is trying to do, and they're going to increasingly face difficulty, is they're going to try and use overseas manufacturers and U.S. strike breakers in order to continue this. They're going to basically try to import. Well, let me guess you something.
More scabs and import stuff.
Import ain't going to work in a supply chain crisis. You might have heard of a backup over at the port of L.A., so they're doubly screwed and when it comes to that. And same with the strike breakers. It's very clear these people have no ability because there are a lot of skilled employees that are out on strike, and they found that, they tried to bring their office workers and more. So John Deere also posturing here. The real question is, look, who's going to hold out longer? And I think that the workers having rejected 2 separate offers now, and saying, no, absolutely not, we're sticking to our guns, puts the company in a real bad position. So 2-3 weeks from now, I think they're going to
We'll see if they come back to the table.
Right.
It was kind of, it was a little duplicitous the way that the company handled this latest contract offer because they put it out there and the vote for the ratification happened before they made that statement that this was their last best offer, which, is a useful piece of information when people are ultimately voting on whether they're going to accept this deal or not. But it seems like, one of the key things that workers have been complaining about and why they ultimately decided to go out on strike was because of this 2-tier system. And that was left in place in the offer that was put on the table. As you referenced, always important to note, John Deere enjoying record-breaking profits, nearly $6 billion projected for their full year earnings. So they could make life better for these workers. They could get rid of the 2-tier system if they so chose. Clearly, workers having an impact, putting the squeeze on them here. But as you guys know, John Deere workers, not the only workers who are on strike or considering going on strike, authorizing strike. We've been tracking over 30,000 healthcare workers for Kaiser who had previously authorized a strike. Now they've taken another step that inches them right up to the door of walking out, giving that company 10-day notice that they intend to go out on strike on November 15th. This is from More Perfect Union. They say 32,000 Kaiser workers have given 10-day notice they'll go out on strike. Workers in California and Oregon are fighting against what? Two-tier pay structure that will slash new worker wages. They are also demanding at least 4% raises. And part of why the two-tier system for Kaiser is so significant to these workers, even the ones who, are benefiting from the higher level tier, is that these hospitals are dramatically understaffed. So the workers that are there are being, horrifically burdened. And of course, having, still being in a pandemic and having come through the worst of a pandemic, these people on the ground, I mean, the hours they've been going through and the emotional toll and the burden and all of that. Well, if you have low wages that you're offering to workers, you're going to stay understaffed, because we know that workers have a little bit of power right now. And also a lot of workers are leaving the healthcare industry because of what the hell they went through COVID.
Yep.
So they also feel like this two-tier structure means that their staffing crisis and their agony around that is just going to continue. So again, Kaiser, huge profits, $10 billion that they made during the pandemic. If they wanted to get rid of the two-tier structure, if they wanted to give their workers that I'm sure they were happy to praise as essential, there are heroes,
nurses, yes,
et cetera, if they wanted to give them 4% raise, a little bit of a bump in pay, they have more than enough to be able to do that.
Yeah, and look, I'm always stunned whenever we look at the actual demands. Here's what they're asking for: a 4% increase for nurses and healthcare workers annually for the next 3 years. Kaiser said it's offering 2%. How are you supposed to do with 2%? I mean, what are we already covering? Inflation, food, gas. I mean, 2% is not even going to cut it in the best of times.
No, not
and
even
you're
close.
offering
Not even
only 4%. How is that possible in one of the most major economic disruptions in modern history? And that's the thing. They're willing to go to bat just for 4%. They should get 10 if they're what they're really looking for, especially if they made $10 billion in terms of all of the healthcare subsidies that we've thrown at these companies during coronavirus. I mean, they're doing better than ever. And these people have to go out and risk their livelihood just for a 4% annual raise at a time where the cost of goods in terms of what it actually costs is going up much more than that.
Right.
That is what pisses me off the most about this.
They're asking for less of a decrease in their wages, effectively, when you factor in inflation. I mean, that's what they're really asking for here. To get closer to keeping up with the pace of inflation is what they're asking for, and an end to the two-tier structure, which has made their lives miserable, and also, of course, breaks solidarity between the workforce, and which is the whole intention of all of this. It's really interesting. I don't know if you guys covered it last week when I was out, but Joe Weisenthal tweeted a Bloomberg article about how you have
Oh no, I saved that one for you.
Two major carriers, FedEx
right.
and UPS. Okay, FedEx is non-union. UPS is organized by the Teamsters. They're union workers. They're much higher paid. These are good, these are good middle class jobs. Where if you're a driver and you work your way up, you can be making $100,000 a year, good benefits, pension, all those sorts of that sort of middle class stability. By the way, very, very difficult jobs, but you're able to earn enough to achieve that middle class lifestyle.
Right.
Not the case for FedEx. And now in this crisis, FedEx is basically screwed because their workforce is quitting en masse. They have a massive labor shortage. They're having to reroute hundreds of thousands of packages to deal with the fact that they don't have enough drivers and other workers to be able to handle the package load that they've been inundated with. So even though they pay their workers much, much less, UPS is not only making more, but they have lower costs.
Exactly.
Because they actually have the workforce that they
have less
need.
turnover.
They have less turnover. People are trained. Their system is able to work efficiently. And so they are destroying FedEx in the competition right now, just showing how the whole point that I wanted to make with this is basically these companies can be penny wise and pound foolish, whereby trying to nickel and dime their workers and not paying them enough to actually make it worth it to take the job or to do the job, they're actually shooting themselves in the foot here ultimately. So even if you don't care about the fairness of the people who got us through this pandemic and have been doing the Lord's work, I had my own interactions with the healthcare system last week, and God bless those nurses and the work that they have taken on every single day, even if you don't care about this can be incredibly idiotic just from a business perspective in order to continue to, have an efficient operation and be able to profit and expand and move forward.
It's very true. Even anecdotally, seeing stuff on Nextdoor or whatever. By the way, if anybody is not on Nextdoor, I recommend it just to see what the Karens are up to. But everybody is saying stuff like, oh my gosh, can't send anything by FedEx. And I had to send something to somebody. And I read that article and I was like, here we go, UPS store.
This is why.
It's a little bit further, but I'm going to the UPS store to actually make sure my thing gets there on time.
It's the difference between a high profit margin but fragile business.
Exactly.
And a sustainable business, supply chain, all of those things, and having workers who actually can live and are happy relatively in their job makes your business much less fragile. Ultimately makes your entire economy a lot less fragile.
Unions in many ways are a very big tool for anti-fragility. So there we go.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.